Okay. Well, yay. Thank you so much, Janine. I'm so happy to have you here, and welcome everyone that is watching wherever you are in the world and time and space. I really hope you're doing well. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Janine about learning how to trust yourself. We're going to talk a little bit about boundaries and self-care and learning how to trust your intuition. And we're just going to have a really deep conversation on getting really clear with your mental health and yourself, and how maybe we can get to that point if we're having some blockages and struggles around that today. So I'm super duper excited. Janine, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with your audience virtually or whatnot in the future.
I know, the magic of technology, right?
Yeah.
So first, why don't you just tell us a little bit maybe about yourself, what you do, and how you came into the super awesome work that you do.
Yeah. So currently I am a psychologist turned mental wellness and consciousness coach, which just means I do coaching currently virtually for people all around the world regarding mental wellness and consciousness. And I found myself in psychology after a really rough go of it myself. I used to be a ballet dancer. So for 17 years, I trained in ballet. It was like my life. It was all I did. It was my identity: breathe, sleep, eat, dance. And I got to the point after a long history of some health issues, a lot of injuries and things like that. And just in general, ballet being really hard on the body, having to maintain this like super slim athletic frame. I just got to the point where I was done. And so I quit when I was about 24 or 25. And I thought, this was going to be a short career, but I was going to dance longer, another 15 years or something. And I was just devastated. I was depressed, anxious, having panic attacks, just feeling really hopeless. And so that's when I finally reached out for help. And it was the first time I went to my own therapy. And I found it so transformative, life-changing. And I was just so excited to learn more about psychology. I'm like, what is this? I need to learn this. So I jumped into graduate school, did my master's and doctorate in clinical psychology, and started working with veterans. So I worked at the VA, or the Veterans Affairs, for quite a long time, like 7 years, working with veterans exclusively, doing all the traditional treatments you're taught, the evidence-based treatments you're taught in school, like, for PTSD and depression, like DBT and gosh, I can't even think of the names now. I've like kind of veered away from them, but like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, those types of things. And I was again found myself a bit, I guess, out of alignment. I thought, oh, well, this is going to be my career and this is what I'm going to do. And then something just wasn't jiving for me. And so then I started to seek out like the alternative treatments: EFT tapping, the emotion code, hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, access consciousness, and all these sorts of things that led me to realize psychology really didn't have all the answers. It was missing something. People were not getting well as I knew what was possible. And so after I started to incorporate like the energetics and spirituality into what I knew psychologically, that just changed everything, changed how I work with clients now in general, and just the change that is possible, the transformation that's possible. So I left the VA about last February and now work for myself and see folks one-on-one and do group coaching and create courses and all that sort of stuff.
Wow, what a magical journey you've been on, and such fulfilling work, I'm sure, to be able to be that much of a resource and a healing tool for people. Like I don't know, that's so admirable, and I love that about your work. It's funny, you and I are very interested. Obviously, we're on the call together for a reason. We kind of share a lot of the same values, but I've kind of been on the same journey, but in reverse. I started through the spirituality space. I started as a yoga teacher and meditation teacher, and I still do that. And I've kind of dived deeper into that whole new age spirituality part. And now I've been doing that for about 5 years. And now I'm so interested in the clinical side of things and the scientific side of psychology.
Well,
I was like, ooh, maybe if I could go back, when I do go back one day, I think I would really love to study psychology, because there is so much kind of bleeding over. And it's nice to hear from someone who already has that scientific background, that you're still able to see the validity, I suppose, in these spiritual tactics, because so many people think that it's just kind of like smoke and air, you know what I mean? So that's really cool that you see the validity and the crossover in that from your scientific background.
Yeah, well, look, there's just like too much out there. And especially like I love Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a ton about this, and he does a lot of research regarding all of this and quantum physics and whatnot that really does support, spiritual practices or the energetics under everything. That now I'm just kind of like, how can it not be that in my eyes? And if something hasn't come to be yet, to me, it's kind of like, well, we just haven't developed a sensitive enough system or diagnostics or something to that effect. And then if you just kind of throw things in like the placebo effect, what else is possible here? We don't even know, because if we believe something enough, we can create it. And so that's what I want to focus on. What else is possible that's going to create creator for people's realities?
Yeah, I love that. I mention that all the time to people. It's like, if you believe that it worked, then it kind of already worked, right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And then people want to like question it, like, well, but like, what if it's not true? I'm like, is that even relevant? I mean, that's like a helpful question to ask yourself.
Yeah. Cool. Yay, science.
Yeah, right.
So today I kind of wanted to have the specific angle of learning how to trust yourself, because that's something that I know you talk a lot on, and I've heard a lot of people, I'll say women, because that's a majority of who our community is, but all people, but especially women, kind of struggle with, is learning how to trust themselves and tap into that intuitive kind of clarity that they have, and especially those of us that are on this spiritual and mental health journey. I know a lot of people are feeling really lost, especially nowadays, really confused and anxious. And I hear so many people say that they're not sure which is the right path to take for them, and they feel kind of stuck and not able to make any decisions because they don't know what the right path is. So I guess, do you feel like these are issues that are inherently tied to not being able to trust yourself? And do you have some suggested beginning steps or practices for people who are looking to kind of get over that struggle?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, 2020 and beyond has really kind of put a magnifying glass on this, and that we're in this space of really needing to cultivate self-trust, self-awareness. What do we know? Because there is just so much information out there. And, we're really built in or brought into this reality where school and the society teaches us to seek answers outside of ourselves. What does the school say? Take tests, get the right answer, listen to experts, listen to your parents, listen to whatever. And it really does us a disservice, because then we're not using, what you could say, maybe critical thinking skills, or we're not even tapping into our intuition, or what do we know? And so part of what I do help or facilitate folks with is starting to trust that knowing. And the only way you can do that, well, my favorite way to do it is to ask questions, to live as question. So what does this mean? We usually come to conclusion. This is the way things are. This is what it is, etc. And neurolinguistic programming will tell us that whatever we've decided to be will just be reflected back to us, right? Our reality, like our point of view, creates our reality. Yet if we are in question, we are able to invite in possibilities, right? So conclusions create limitations, questions invite possibilities. So if I'm trying to decide something, like to choose something, I can ask myself, well, will this make my life greater in 5 years if I choose it, yes or no? And I ask the question in sense of looking to tap into the awareness or the energy of what's possible. And I say 5 years because it's far enough out that I can't really think about it, right? I can't really totally imagine and go the pro and con and whatever we do to invalidate our knowing. I have to just tap into energetically, what am I aware of? What is that going to create? And so if something feels really light and expansive and exciting, wow, that's going to create a greater reality for me. But if it gets heavy and it thuds, then it's not for me. It's not true for me, right? And so when people can start to really strengthen their ability to listen to the whisper of that, because it's so subtle, right? To listen to that, then they can start to trust themselves. So it's really a practice. So that's why I recommend practicing getting in question or living as question.
I love that shift of what you said, where conclusions create limitations, but these questions, it opens you up to that possibility. I think that is so beautiful and so empowering to take that on as a mindset, you know, to then believe, and maybe it takes some work for sure to get there, but to believe that anything really is possible for you and to kind of see that for yourself. I know we talk a lot about empowerment and manifestation in this group, and I'm curious, a little sidebar, but we do a lot of kind of witchy-esque things in this group, like tarot and moon circles and things like that. So as you talk about listening to that whisper, strengthening that intuition, I'm wondering what your opinions or experiences are with like divination practices like tarot or anything like that, or if that's anything that you've ever practiced, because it is tied into listening to that whisper a little bit too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see them as like tools to facilitate your knowing, or, you know, whoever else is on your team that's attempting to kind of communicate with you. So, and I've definitely pulled cards before and kind of use that in the sense of like, okay, well, what does this mean for me? Again, still going into question, right? Because it's really easy for us to like, well, what does the book say? This is what the card means. And so let me come to conclusion about it. Again, this is where it can be really helpful to stay in question. Well, what does this mean for me? Is this true for me? And again, this whole idea of people start to listen to what's light and heavy. So if something's light for you is true for you. Like truth is light. It's like, yes, oh my gosh, it just feels airy and spacious. Something that's light is heavy and will tend to make us angry. And so it kind of thuds. And so what's true for me will not necessarily be true for you, right? Because we're kind of all in these different areas in our path and our journey and whatnot. And so when we start to look at it like that energetically, then it's really great to have these other tools to kind of add on something else, like another layer of, oh, that kind of brought my attention to maybe something I wasn't looking at. And I mean, same with manifestation. To me, the way I manifest, so to speak, is by asking a lot of questions, like basically asking the universe, what would it take for you to contribute to this process? What would it take to have this luxury farm with total ease? What's that going to take? Right? Because when I'm just asking those questions, then your mind starts to work towards that way to pull that reality to you.
Yeah, because it wants that to be possible for you, you know, and you start attracting the frequency that you emit, for sure. I wanted to ask a little bit of like a caveat that I've noticed to this work, because we talk a lot about, you know, self-care and rest, and when you're saying, you know, listen to that voice, listen to your truth. And I like what you said too about the truth being light and a lie being heavy, so maybe that'll tie into this as well. But I'm wondering, one thing that I've noticed that sometimes that's hard to distinguish is the difference between doing something that's like restful and restoring for yourself versus doing that same action but in the form of avoidance or numbing, you know, and being able to decipher between the two. So like if you, I don't know, having a really bad kind of low energy day, and if you're thinking, okay, well, what does my body need right now? What should I do? What do I do to take care of myself? And you default to like laying in bed all day, let's just say, as a random example. Not saying that that's always bad, but is there a way to kind of know when you're making decisions that are truly restorative for you versus decisions that are just a way of avoiding?
Yeah, totally. So first, what we got to look at is judgment is a killer. Judgment is the killer of creation, right? It's a limitation, and we actually go into fight and flight responses when we tune into judgment. And so even though we say, well, yeah, let's not shame ourselves or whatever, how much judgment are people aware of, whether it be their own or the tapping into the iCloud, the kind of collective consciousness, when they lay in bed all day. And then when you tap into the judgment, it's like a huge weight on you that just kind of melts you into the bed to stay there. And really, the other thing is there is no question in judgment. There's only conclusions. So if I felt the pain to lay in bed all day, I'd ask my body, would this be a contribution to you to just lay here? And if I got a yes, or it felt light, okay, then I'm going to freaking choose it. Right. And be okay with it, because knowing I've communed with my body, right? I mean, we kind of just ignore our bodies and just like force it into submission. Versus if I get, no, it wouldn't be a contribution. I'd be like, okay, I can still choose despite what my body's telling me. I can still choose it. The key here is allowance for what I'm choosing. Because if I go into, well, I shouldn't choose this because my body said, blah, 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 and I'm just going to spiral and feel worse. And when we're in allowance of, you know what, I can choose this. It might make me feel worse. Okay. We free ourselves up to move out of it faster. That's the trick. Because really, we just want to look at, does nature function from judgment? No, it just is, right? The sun just rises, birds just sing. It just is. There is no judgment there. So what is the value in us doing it?
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's really powerful. I know it's something that so many people struggle with too. I'm even just thinking, personally, I have very proactive masculine energy by default, and I'm very kind of just going and doing all the time. And even just like last week, I had food poisoning. And even with that, I was so upset that I just had to lay in bed for 2 days. I was like, this is ridiculous. I need to get up and I should do something, but I couldn't even stand up without feeling sick. So it's just letting go of that programming of judging yourself.
Yeah.
But sometimes taking what you need is so freaking hard.
Yeah. And do you see how you like went into the conclusion there of like, this shouldn't be happening? Why, you know what I mean? Or if we say, why is this happening? That's not really a question. That's a statement with a question mark attached, because we want to look at the energy. So when I'm talking about staying in question, I'm talking about curiosity energy. Why is this happening to me? This shouldn't happen, whatever, right? Then it's like, it slams you in further, versus it can be helpful to ask the flip side, because our wrongness muscle is so overdeveloped. It can be helpful to ask when something like that happens, well, what's right about this I'm not getting? Because when we tune into, it's like, well, I didn't even think, well, what is right about food poisoning? I mean, you might have awareness of, oh, wow, okay, I've been going too fast, or my body is just really craving some quiet time that I wasn't tuning into, or whatever awareness you get that you wouldn't have gotten without asking the question.
Yeah. And like finding that silver lining kind of in a way too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not, I also want to caveat that it's not bypassing, because a lot of folks go into like, well, it's toxic positivity. And I'm like, it's not that, because when we can see our emotions, our feelings as just the body requiring weathering, like the weather just happens. Like I'm in a sunny place today, but when it rains, there is no point. Mother Nature doesn't have a point of view about it, right? There's no judgment about it. It just rains. It's kind of like when your body is volcano erupting, I guess is the image that came to mind. It's just the volcano erupts, right? Energy needs to be purged for whatever reason. What's right about that you're not getting? Was your body happy to release something? And then when you're in that space, you have more allowance and ease for what your body's going through, versus look, and I do it too, going into the shame, blame, guilt, whatever. This shouldn't be happening. I have like a bunch to do, and I'm whatever it means about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll just to piggyback off that a little bit. Do you have any tips for holding space for other people that might be struggling without going into this bypassing and toxic positivity? Because I noticed that I have a very kind of sunny disposition, very optimistic, and I'm trying hard to find ways to hold space for people. And I want to make them feel better innately, I think is the thing. But then being able to do that without just defaulting to, oh, well, everything will be okay. It all happens for a reason, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, okay. On one hand, I want to look at like in that situation, like when you are with people, what is the value in you shrinking yourself to where they're at?
Like as in seeing things from their point of view, you mean?
Well, no, in the sense of like kind of what you're saying is like, if I'm in this, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm in this energetic space where I feel really good and excited and whatever, and this person in front of me is just somewhere else, how often do we like shrink down our energy to match the frequency that they're at? Because it's like, we don't want to make them feel wrong for it, right? That we just kind of naturally do this. Yet, and if you follow Abraham Hicks at all, who I love, they always talk about you can't get sick enough to heal another person. You can't get unhappy enough to heal another person. So what does that mean? Then it's like, for me, what does it take to be the dominant reality of space? To say, hey, I'm living here. You can come join me. but I'm not going to that place. And I can acknowledge where you're at. This is something with psychology that does tend to stick people, because psychology teaches us to validate feelings and emotions and all that business. But you can only validate a judgment. And if we talked about judgment, it's like we go into all those like conclusions and things like that. And so when we acknowledge people, it's like, okay, it's okay for you to be right where you're at. It just is. It's not right or wrong or good or bad. Mm-hmm. And that frees people up to change versus needing to like, well, I don't want to be too positive. It's kind of not about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Allowing, just the word that keeps coming up for me and sticking with me is that allowing. And I think I really love that about the situation too.
Allowances, if I can just offer real quick, allowance and acceptance are quite different energetically. Allowance has the space and ease to it versus acceptance has a little bit of like, well, I'll accept this, but I'll accept this, but it's still got the judgment behind it versus allowances includes everything.
I love that. Yay. Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. I know, and especially a lot of us who are kind of moving into being leaders ourselves in this group and like the wellness and spirituality space. So I think being able to be there and be supportive to people in that way, I think is something that's really powerful. And especially as women, we need kind of moving forward if we're hoping to elevate this iCloud. I like that you called it the iCloud before.
Yeah, because it's like if we think, because it's like how much are we taught to as women to like, don't be too whatever, don't be too pretty, don't be too loud, don't be too wealthy, don't be too shrink yourself down, like don't be too seen. What is all that, right? Again, it's just judgment and limitation to keep ourselves playing small. And the more that we can just have access to us, be more of us, we basically communicate that it's okay for others to do that too. And so when you offer holding that space when someone's in a funk, it doesn't mean that it's like you still read the room and you're still not like, saying it's okay, everything's fine. It's like, no, it's like it's the allowance for choosing where they're at. That's the allowance piece, right? If they're choosing to kind of be in the funk, if you see everything as a choice, then it's like, okay, cool. You can choose that. And what else is possible?
And what else?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we had a question from Megan in the group. She's talking about kind of a desire to follow through on personal practices, but suffering from the inundation of distractions in the modern world. And the way she worded it is, what are some ways that busy women can unplug for a while and rediscover their creative fires?
Yeah, so there's all the typical tips that people will give on this. And I want to look at what is the value in distraction? Because anytime we are choosing the behavior, because if we look at everything as a choice, okay, I'm choosing this behavior of distraction. What am I getting out of it? I'm getting something out of it that it's like, what I can avoid looking at this or what is that? So it's just looking at that first. Then I would look at, well, what do I know about me and how can I set myself up for success? So does that mean starting my day off? I mean, this is huge too, starting the day off with not looking at my phone immediately. And like, that's an ongoing thing for me. I'll go for periods of time where I don't, periods of time where I do. And every time that I'm going straight to social media or straight to an email right away I wake up, that is not programming myself for the reality I desire. We just have access to so much more information at any given moment that we can just go into all these fight and flight responses that we almost become addicted to those adrenaline hits. So then it's like, well, I need to like look what's going on social and what's going on in the news and what's that energy. And so it's like, that's what feels normal, right? And so it's almost like it feels too boring to unplug, so to speak. So the morning is a really great time to start to reprogram yourself, just because right when you're waking up, I'm sure as you know, like your brains are in a more relaxed wave state. So it's a perfect time to listen easily to a hypnosis or something to that effect. I'll even just as I'm waking up, start to do some different energetic body processes or go over some kind of affirmations or questions in my head to just start getting myself towards that space. Another thing that I really love to create the space is access bars. Are you familiar with this, or have you heard of it before?
Oh,
So basically, it's a hands-on body process, but through access consciousness, where you lie down for like an hour, someone lightly touches 32 points on your head to create electromagnetic bars, which basically release kind of pent up emotions, thoughts, all this kind of monkey mind stuff that really defrags the system and like clears the desktop is the best way I can describe it. But it really creates the space that I sense we're all really craving right now, that we just fill up our day with thoughts, emotions, feelings, food, shopping, scrolling, right? Because it's like we're almost space phobic, right? And so it's like getting used to creating that space more often creates ease on our body. And so bars is like one of the best ways to create that. And people can find, if you just go to accessconsciousness.com, you can find facilitators in your area that will do it for you. And it's probably the most life-changing process that I've had done. And I've tried a lot of different energy work. And so.
wow. Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that, because I know finding that space is so hard, and something that I think is so valuable for a lot of us. That's kind of one of the first tips that I'll give people who are wanting to start like a wellness or mindfulness self-care practice, is like, just see if you can, even just for 5 minutes, just sit down and do nothing. Like stare out a window. I don't care, you can have your coffee cup, your tea cup, whatever, just try to like do nothing for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I can do that, but it's so hard.
Yeah, so hard. 5 minutes. I'm like, girl, that's a long time.
Yeah, they're like fidgeting. They're like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good for you, and you just feel so spacious and so capable.
Yeah.
Afterwards. And it's funny, I love that you brought up the morning time. And maybe, I don't know, I need to reprogram my brain, because morning times are when I feel very, very energetic. And I know I wake up and I meditate to try to kind of get it under control, but I wake up and I'm kind of instantly with to-dos. It's like, okay, I got to take the dog out. I got to feed the dog. I got to make coffee, got to make breakfast, got to get dressed, got to do this. And I'm in that like automatically when I wake up. So I'm constantly trying to kind of just start with space. And then after I do all the things, then I kind of allow myself to settle down. But yeah, mornings are so crucial for sure.
Yeah. And it's it's just a muscle to train, it's kind of like the research behind meditations shows that it's like they actually saw differences on brain scans after 8 weeks, 20 minutes a day. So it's like, that's a lot of time to, people are like, I meditated 5 minutes and nothing's changed. Like, well, it's like same thing. You go to the gym one time, like you might not see muscle strength yet, but you're training the cells to be that way. And so it's just taking time and being easy with ourselves and not going to judgment, and just, like you said, starting with 2 minutes, 5 minutes, just the amount of time that you can accomplish, and showing up daily for it.
Yeah. And making it a habit for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the last little bit here that I wanted to cover is, I've loved all of your posts recently. We're like end of November, beginning of December recording this, but lately I've loved all of your posts about examples on how to set boundaries, especially around the holidays and with family members coming up. So if you don't follow Janine, it's Kreft's Couch on Instagram. And is it the same on TikTok?
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, and YouTube now too. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so definitely go check out her Instagram and TikTok on there. But do you have any kind of beginner's tips for those who are really struggling with setting boundaries for themselves? And it doesn't have to be, in the holiday family context, just kind of in general, setting boundaries for yourself.
Yeah. No, and I was just doing that because it's like I was like, what are your requests? And it's like get-togethers or gift giving and all that stuff. So really, first of all, it's looking at people. When people ask, how do I do things? They're functioning from the point of view that they're already going to get it wrong, or like they have to get it right. So they're focusing from judgment. And so what I say is, be willing to get it wrong, do it badly, do it poorly, and do it anyways. That has been such a gift for anything that I find myself resisting doing, is being willing to get it wrong, a willingness energy. And so it really does come down to just practice doing it, speaking up more often, and not making it significant or relevant how the other person reacts. Because ultimately, that is the way people control us, is with their reactions, with using emotions, and it's like attempts to manipulate. I mean, every behavior we're engaging in is some form of manipulation. And people kind of freak out about that because they're like, well, I don't manipulate. It's like, well, if you see manipulation as bad, but it's like we all are manipulating situations. When you can get out of the right and wrongness of it, it just is. So when you can kind of zoom out a little bit and just see if you set a boundary and someone goes into trauma and drama about it, that is their attempts to control you, right? And so it's like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you were ineffective, right? Especially if you say something that's clear, honest, genuine, whatever, and you tune in again with your awareness, your intuition. What can they hear right now? Because sometimes it's like we go into like, I have to speak my whole truth and nothing but the truth. It's like, what can they hear? Right? Ask a question. What can they hear? What's going to create the greatest here? Right? Because then again, I'm going to get more information about what will create the greatest possible situation or the most ease with this. And then just whatever that other person chooses is their choice. It's just where they're functioning from. That doesn't mean that you have to then bend your boundary because of that. So that, and then the other key spot I would say that people don't talk about a lot is you really got to be the boundary. I know from, energetics, it's like the be, do, have, and manifestation, be, do, have. You got to be it first. And a lot of people say, well, I said the boundary and then they broke it or whatever, they push back. It's like, what is the energy of someone who leads or sets a boundary and like that's their boundary? What is that energy? So that's what people got to look at if they're not, and this is why I use coffee metaphors to kind of explain the varying strengths of boundaries. So it's like I have the frappuccinos or the sweeter drinks as the more malleable, boundaries versus the black coffee, red eye, like this you cannot cross, thou shalt not pass kind of boundary. Because it's like every situation is different. You need something different for everything. And if we be the frappuccino boundary when we really want to be a black coffee boundary, well, then you're communicating to people unconsciously or consciously if people are aware, because the bulk of communication is nonverbal. We're communicating to each other, well, I'm saying this, but I don't really buy it. So you don't have to buy it too. Right. And people are psychic and pick up on that. And so if that's why we have to be it along with saying it. So whatever that means, how we stand, how we present ourselves, tone energetically. And it doesn't mean we have to be mean or aggressive. It's just, what is that assertive energy? That means, no, this is it. I appreciate you understanding.
Yeah. Wow. So it's so hard. See, that's the first thing is like, well, it's so hard to do that sometimes, but if you believe that you can, and if that's something that you want, then yeah, emulating that is the way to make it happen. Right. So
exactly. Well, and that's the thing, because it's kind of like if you stop making other people's reactions significant or relevant. I did one on, saying kind of no to a friendship or no, I don't want to hang out anymore. And it's still on TikTok doing a thing. And a lot of like high schoolers and younger kids are like, this is so mean and this is so pretentious and just ghost me. And it's like, what, oh my God, these kids, they're afraid to speak up or to just be almost autistic, I want to say, as it's just like a no filter, just like, hey, this actually doesn't feel light for me to choose. Right. And if people are in a place, because healthy people don't take things personally. They know that, where people are functioning from is where they're functioning from, and everything that comes out of their mouth is from that. Right. And if someone is like, this is no longer feeling light for me to choose, it's like, okay, cool. We move on, versus everyone takes things personally, or they make it really relevant or significant. Right. And this is then where we go to the codependent, try to managing other people's emotional reactions, which we will never win at.
Yeah.
So I sense the more comfortable we can get at just being more clear, right? And still, because it's a kindness to be clear, right? Versus going into however we're trying to like appease, because then it's not really what we want. And then we get resentful and go into all that. It just can create so much ease, I think, in communication that way.
And yeah, I think life you deserve to have a life of ease. And I think that's another thing we don't realize. We think we have to struggle and everything needs to be hard. But it doesn't have to be, it shouldn't be, it's not meant to be. I don't believe. And so, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've kind of said that in everything that you have, is that it should feel light, it should feel easy. That's what it's meant to be.
Totally. Yeah. No, I'm excited you said that because it's like, I think people come into this notion of life has to be hard, or my life is only valuable if I work really hard. I even find myself, my husband will come home, how was your day? And I was like, well, was it good enough to say it was good? Or do I need to prove that I worked hard? Like, it was kind of hard, like, what is that? Versus, well, what would it take for me just to be an allowance of it being easy? And again, people don't have to buy anything we're saying today. They can look at, well, is that light for me? Is it light for me to believe that life is meant to be ease and I can choose for it to be difficult? Or is life supposed to be difficult? Is that lighter for them? It's like, well, that one kind of thuds for me. So it's just, you know what I mean? It's like, well, that's not so fun. So if like when you just start, evaluating everything through that, you have so much clarity and coming back to the idea of trusting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Close the knot. Perfect. So, Janine, I always ask our guests this last question. In what way can our community or anyone watching this be of service to you today?
Yeah, well, definitely come find me on Instagram or TikTok. I'm on Instagram and TikTok there a lot, creating a lot of short form videos, and now recently YouTube. And if folks want to work with me one-on-ones, I have different things going on or different group options, and also have my whole 3-month Exploring Your Purpose gig. That's going to start in January, I believe, which is my 3-month transformational experience, which just basically has people looking at, well, what is their purpose and how do they create that? And basically, I come at it from a pretty different point of view, as maybe you've noticed now, but it does include all the ideas of psychology, energetics, neurolinguistic programming, access consciousness. And so really kind of creating a foundation of healing that people can go through where, trauma responses might impact our nervous system stuff. And going through all that, getting really clear on folks trusting themselves, finding what lights them up, then talking about money. So it's like this whole situation. So that's in January if folks are feeling the ping for that.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect timing for New Year's. Yeah, so all of that is down below in the description. You can find Janine's Instagram, TikTok, her Teachable account with all her courses is there. There's lots of really awesome kind of bite-sized bits too for you to access if you want. So yeah, Janine, thank you so much. I feel really inspired, and I learned a lot too as a space holder and as just an energetic thing. So thank you so much for coming here and chatting with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. Ciao. Bye.